Welcome. Recently I was asked a question on what kind of a woodworking project would be good for their kid to learn at 11 or 12 or so. And that got me to thinking on what tools would be good for children to start out with, kids to start out with. And so today, in this video, I have 9 different tools that I can show you that are great for a beginner child's tool set and would last many years. So you're not buying a kid's tool set per se, made for children. You're buying real tools that they can get started with and use for years to come. So let's get started. First, in woodworking, cutting wood is essential, and you need to make good straight cuts. So a good starter saw for a child would be a good hand saw about this size. This is about what I would get. And with a modern cut teeth. If it's a modern cut tooth, instead of like the classical saw tooth, it cuts better, it cuts cleaner, it's much sharper, but that's good because if it's sharper, they won't be pushing too hard on the cut. And usually when you're pushing too hard on the cut, or you're struggling too much, or your saw is dull, that's when you get hurt. So it's actually good to have a really sharp saw. So a good hand saw is the first thing to get because you have to cut wood for any kind of project. So I'd get a good hand saw. Number 2 on the list would be a good coping saw. This is a hand saw with a very thin blade in it to where you can make real sharp real sharp cuts, curved cuts, scroll work. You can get in, you can cope 2 pieces of trim together. This is a good saw to have. It will last the kid a lifetime. It's always good to have around. You always need it. When you need it, you need it. So a good coping saw, and it comes with this, disposable blades. So a good coping saw is what I would get. Third would be a good hammer. Now this is something that you might not last the lifetime of the kid, because you'll want to get a hammer that fits them at their age, not too heavy or what. I would get a claw hammer, whether it be a rip hammer like this one with a straight puller bar, or one that's more curved. It doesn't really matter. As long as the kid can handle it, it's not too heavy. This will be something that they may not keep. They'll keep it, but they may not use it when they're an adult because it might be too light. But a good hammer, because they'll need to drive nails. Nails are one of the very first starter fasteners that they'll use, and they'll want a hammer to hammer in the nails. So a good hammer. Number 4 is a good square. Now, I would probably get a kid a good speed square, and a good speed square in metal. This is for 90-degree marking right here, and it also has a built-in protractor, so when they learn a little bit more, they can draw different angles on the wood to cut different angles. It's virtually indestructible in metal. So, you get them one and it'll last a good lifetime with them. So a good speed square, and it's always useful. It's useful in framing, it's useful in woodwork, it's useful for quick setting up, table saws and whatever. So it'll be a good tool to start out with, and it'll last them a while. Number 5 would be a good tape measure. Now, you have to measure in woodworking, and a good tape measure is what they'll need. I would get, a good sturdy one, not a cheap one. They will not last. You always replace these after a few years. You wear them out. The tape gets all broken and stuff like that. I always like buying 30-foot, but for a kid, 15 or so is fine. They'll have smaller hands and all, but a good tape measure is an essential to have because you always need to make cuts. And it'll be good for them because they'll have to learn how to do fractions with the fractional inches that are in woodworking. So they'll learn, fractions off of it, what the longer marks mean, what the shorter marks mean. It's a good learning tool for them. There's all sorts of little hidden features on a good tape measure. So a good tape measure. Number 6, in woodworking you always need clamps. And you never have enough clamps. So you might as well get started off on clamps. And this is what I would buy a kid for the first set of clamps. I would get a good parallel clamp like this one in wood, and this is a classical Jorgensen clamp. These be great for holding together pieces of wood while they're gluing. It'll be good for holding stuff down while cutting, while using your saw. Hold down the piece of wood to a good table so they can keep their fingers away from the saw, and it just makes for a safe working environment. But a good set of parallel clamps, I use these still all the time, and they are a good set, and I've had these a good 20 years, probably maybe 30 years. They'll last forever. Well worth the investment, and like I said, you never have enough clamps. So a good set of clamps. So those are the hand tools. The next set of 3 tools would be power tools. And you may worry about power tools in kids, but these are good to start out with. Start with, supervision. Clamp your wood down that you're drilling or whatever or working on, and keep your fingers and hands away from the different parts of the power tool. But these are the power tools that I would start a kid out with. And first off, number 7 would be a good corded drill. I would get a corded drill before I would get a kid a cordless drill. It's less to worry about. You don't have to worry about the batteries. It is stronger if you buy a good brand, like this is a DeWalt. I always have a good corded drill around because they're just tougher. They can bind up. If you're drilling something and it binds up, it won't hurt the drill as much. They last a lot longer. And I would, along with this, I would get a good set of twist drill bits, a starter set of between 1/8 and 1/2 in a twist drill, 1/8 inch and 1/2 inch. Just a decent cheap starter set for, first drills is fine. They'll end up breaking them, or they'll end up, damaging them. So, don't spend too much on a good drill set. But anyway, a corded drill is what I would start out with. It's just less to worry about, and it's tougher. So I'd get a good corded drill. Number 8 would be a sander, a power sander. This is a random orbit sander. I personally like the Bosch one right now. And this is good because, you know, it's essential to sand wood when you're woodworking. With this, it makes sanding a lot easier. Sanding is very boring, especially by hand. So you want to keep, you know, your kid entertained and stuff. So I would get a random orbit sander. It either has, you know, adhesive sandpaper, or, you know, it has hook and loop Velcro sandpaper that attaches to it. They can, you know, sand wood smooth. They can sand out their saw marks. They can round over edges. They can freehand shape with this. So it'd be a really good thing to have. And I think, you know, 11, 12 on up is plenty old enough to use this. It's really hard to get hurt with. In fact, I don't think I've ever been really hurt by a random orbit sander. You really got to try. So, you know, you keep your hands away. You know, if you're sanding on something small, keep it clamped to the table, and shouldn't have any problems with it. So a good random orbit sander. And then last, number 9 is kind of an option, but it's a good power tool to start kids out with. I mean, all of these different tools I was working with when I was 12, 13, 14 on up. My dad had a shop. I spent many hours out there building different things, experimenting around. You know, one year I even made my mom and dad Christmas presents. I made my mom a bread box, and I made my dad a TV tray to eat dinner on. So I started out with a jigsaw when I was very young, and you know, the same rules apply. Clamp your stuff. You clamp your wood down that you're cutting. This can cut curves, you know, scroll work in woodwork. It can do straight decently well, maybe good enough for a kid. But it'll be a good power saw to start out with that's relatively safe. You really, you know, apply some supervision at first, you know, apply good woodworking skills, you know, and they'll be able to use this. So this is a good power saw to start out with, and you know, get good sharp blades. Like I said, sharp blades is not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. It means you're not pushing too hard on the wood to cut it, so you have actually more control over the saw itself. So last, a good jigsaw. I hope this helps. I think it's essential for our kids to learn good hand skills, and woodworking is an excellent starter skill to learn. It'll be something that they can use for the rest of their lives, and I feel like this and maybe a few other random, you know, hand tools thrown in, but this set of tools is a great set of tools to start a kid out with, and let them experiment and just let them have fun. Thank you for watching.